for sealed product, you generally want to buy case. You buy by the caseload, you crack it, and then you sell the singles. I mean, it's pretty obvious. The idea is to get in as early as possible. If you go, the best sites that I will say by far are YGO Black Market and YGO Daily. And that, I mean, YGO Daily is kind of a whole another but those are the best places to get sealed cases. And then you have their appropriate promo. Let's see. What about Structured X sealed product? Violet, would you care to elaborate? What do you mean by that? Like cracking them for singles, keeping them sealed, selling them as sealed?
It depends, as a rule of thumb, on how viable the structure deck is. So, and if the structure deck is doing a rerun.
I honestly, at this point, I don't believe in keeping structure decks sealed, especially considering that for the most part, first off, people who want structure decks usually buy them on release and never have to touch them again. Like obviously, and even if you look at the old vintage structure decks, those have not gone up in value. I can buy sealed first edition Dragon's Roar, the first structure deck, for under $100. Yu-Gi-Oh players need a chase. They really do. The chase is what drives people to buy product, and structure decks don't give that, which is a good thing. I mean, they're not designed to give that chase, but that's why I don't believe in structure decks sealed. And modern structure decks especially not, because we saw them re-wave the dinosaur structure deck. That was a very good structure deck, but they remade it, and now you can get them on Walmart shelves even now for $10 a pop. So, and with that always hanging over your head, I see no reason to hold structure deck sealed.
I think like the best deal we've had recently with structure decks was Salaman Great One, where you could buy, I can't remember how much you could buy them for now, but the ash in them was either the whole structure or at least 3/4 of them to resell on. But that's not keeping it sealed. You're cracking it, selling the ash as a single, and then selling off the solid engine as like other bits. But
Okay,
people who would buy the solid engine would only buy the solid structure deck anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I know there were fights at retailers like Walmart's near me for over those. It was pretty funny. I didn't see them any of them personally, but I heard about them. Let's see. Rewave doesn't have the first ed stamp, true, but for structure decks, no one cares about first ed. The card is already guaranteed. Right? Yeah. It's not a pulled card. There's no chase. You got it automatically. So whether or not it's first ed is meaningless.
The cards in the structure deck themselves may go up over time if the structure deck doesn't have a large rerun. So you could like pick, I don't know, like the Monarch structure deck. I assume the ultras in there are probably, I don't know, looking at the top of my head, they're probably more than what they came out on release, although they have lost viability. So again, it depends on how good the structure deck is.
If you look at most structure decks now, their values have pretty much always dropped. The only one, pretty much the only structure deck that has held value at this is Salmon Great. That's really the only one because of Ash. I mean, it's the same thing I said about other sealed product, is that you're just sitting there hoping and praying it goes up. And if anything, structure decks have even less potential to go up because there's no pull. There are people who buy old sealed product and crack it. Like look at Logan Paul and his Pokemon box breaks.
I'm not talking about the sealed. I'm talking about like the ultras and stuff inside them. So the engine pieces, where that's the only way you could have got them. So like certain of them, if one like Eva, for example, that's definitely higher than it is now because it's only got one printing in a structure deck, and the structure deck as well wasn't that great. It was the Counter Fairy one.
Yes,
but that's still not worth buying like a bulk load of structure decks just for a case like the one card goes up.
Right. That's the thing, is like, who is buying a structure? Like, if you want one card out of a structure deck, assuming it's not some crazy card like Ash, are you going to buy that whole structure deck? No. Especially not if it's inflated. Like, yes, technically, the question is like listing price versus sold price is definitely like a huge disconnect. You know, just because you see something online for a certain price doesn't mean it's worth that, because you don't know if it's sold or not. So while, yes, technically, if you look back, sealed structure decks will go up in value on paper. Will you be able to sell them anywhere near that price? I don't think you will. Again, it's the eternal debate between like vintage or vintage or modern. And for vintage, I would say that really the only people who should bother investing in vintage are the people who already have real estate holdings, who already have diversified stock portfolios, who have a lot of disposable income and are just looking for something to pour some more money into. And maybe they're too busy with their lives, because if you're that rich, I'm sure you're busy, that you just want something to just pour your money in and sit on it. But I mean, vintage isn't 100% BS. There are, but again, like, you have to already be in a very privileged position to warrant going into vintage. And I'm just gonna take a gamble and say that most of us aren't in that position, especially not me. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I do hold a few things, but that's just because I want them for my collection, not because I plan on holding them as some asset that's gonna go up over time. Me personally, I would rather turn my money over and over again and have it work for me than just having it sit in my closet and I hope and pray it goes up. If you already bought at the inflated price, are you really profiting? Depends. It really does depend on when you bought and when you sold.
About the inflated price thing, if the price is still going up at the moment of buy, you could buy. It's harder with cards because obviously you need them to be shipped and stuff, but you could buy on like day 2 of it inflating and then sell on day 6 of it inflating. But that, again, it depends on if the price is still going to go up. If you can get the card quick enough to then sell it on reasonably.
Then you have to deal with all the issues regarding vintage cards, like shill bidding and vintage values. Jeez, that guy. Holy cow! I've had 2 conversations with that guy and other voice calls, and that is, if you want to kill more brain cells than a bottle of whiskey would, go talk to that guy. That the amount of delusion in vintage values is crazy. But that's I'm not gonna get into that. We're not here to dox people or whatever.
We could talk about like promo cards, so things that aren't necessarily playable cards as such, but more just. I'm trying to think like the tokens that came in the Charmer structure deck.
First off, those are playable. I mean, you can use them as tokens. That one is a very fringe market. Lost Our Dark Magician Girl. That was that was a speculative bubble. I mean, most people who bought that didn't really care about it. They only bought it because they thought it was going to go up, and then look at it. But sorry, going back to the Charmer tokens, and you're basically just getting into the modern collector's market, which is definitely there. But I mean, the promo cards, they do generally go up. The question is finding a buyer.
The Exodia lot promos, they were, if you could get the full set, you could make like a profit. But I don't know if you're already buying a sealed product as well, then it was a nice hint, because I managed to get I think I got like 3 full sets, and then you could like sell them for basically I'm English money, so I could sell them basically for a £10 profit for the whole set rather than just having them individual. But that was, I guess, something. I don't know how they were done in the States, the Lost Art promos, to be honest.
Let's see. Well, I'll get to Violet's question, but I do want to mention this. Do remember that the Lost Art promotion is obviously designed to help sell sealed product. If you guys have noticed a trend, the best Lost Art promos usually come at the crappiest sealed product. Like, for example, what was the Lost Art promo for Battles of Legend Armageddon, which was a great set. I mean, sure, technically the values, if you look at it now, it's not super great, but on release, that was a very good set. The Lost Art promo for that was Harpy Conductor. Trash. Utter trash. But look at what the Lost Art promo is going to be for a bad set like Blazing Vortex. It's really good. So when it comes to Lost Art, do keep in mind that the best Lost Art promos usually come for the crappiest sets, because then they're hoping that the good Lost Art promo makes up for the bad set. All right, let's see. Violet's question: waifu tax feel is a BS excuse? Okay, first off, waifu tax isn't a real thing. It's just a buzzword that gets thrown out a lot, but it really doesn't mean anything. Waifu tax is just basically used to describe a phenomenon in which a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh players buy cards that depict anime girls, and because there's just an organic higher demand for them, they end up going up in price. Like the Dragon Maids is the best example. Of this. So it's really not a BS excuse to sell cards at a higher price. It's tax really is driven up by actual demand. Whether or not you actually agree with it, I mean whether or not you agree with the market is the market. It does what it wants to do. But
you've got to think of it this way: like we are playing a card game based around an anime. Cards that have an anime-esque art would probably be more sought after. Just A, if they're, you know, nicer looking cards, and B, because we are basically playing an anime card game. That's the way I always see it.
Entirely true. Now, honestly, probably the most fun market to be in is OCG market, because you have to remember, like, do not ever forget the Japanese. I know a bit of a joke, but do not ever forget. Remember that this is a Pokemon learned this the hard way because a lot of Pokemon investors ignored the Japanese market and it bit them in the ass. Do not forget that this is a Japanese game first and foremost. OCG pulls the strings. Half of the decisions that happened here are because OCG told them to do it. Why do you think we haven't gotten crossout designated for so long? And why do you think it took so long for us to get needle fiber? It wasn't just because TCG didn't want to import those cards. It was because OCG would not let them. So to ignore the Japanese market is a huge mistake.
Speaking of the Japanese market, this actually coincides with something you spoke about earlier. So the Japanese market sometimes actually has a really high demand for Western products and Western exclusive products. So the 2018 Dark Competition and Blue Eyes Worlds promos, the ones that came in an envelope and you got for going to Worlds locals events, there's a huge market for those in the Japanese market actually at the moment. So much so that the place is like inflated to stupid levels. I sold my 2 sets too early last year, and now I could get like another 200 quid now if I sold them now. We don't know what they're going to do in another year, basically, because the Japanese market is inflated for this Western promo.
Exactly. I mean, look at 10,000 Dragon. 10,000 Dragon was going up for a while because on release it was about $1,000 and now it's about $1,200. The reason why it did that was because the Japanese gobbled them up. Because turns out it's easier to pull 10K Dragon English than it is Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I guess while you can't ignore the Japanese market is still technically smaller. You have also got to remember that when it comes to cards, North America, so USA, Canada, are the only places in the world where you can buy cards at retail. Like, okay, maybe like for like Fish Guy. I mean, you're in the UK, right?
Yes.
Biggest retailer there is what, Tesco?
Yes.
Can I buy cards at Tesco?
To be honest, no.
There you go.
They used to be able to, but no longer. You can't really buy trading card games at Tesco's anymore.
Yeah, and Tesco is by far the biggest retailer, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. See, North America. There are more North American and English cards than any other language. Like, it blows it out of the water, solely because that they can sell cards here at normal retail stores where everyone goes to, whereas for pretty much the rest of the world, cards are only in card shops. Even in Asia, I can't buy cards at supermarkets in Asia. I can only get them at card shops. This is part of the reason why OCG treats their stores so nicely, and why their sets are generally better than ours.
Card stores also shuffle packs.
Depending, some do, some don't.
Yeah, like my local store does, because they want it to be a fairer market as such for like kids rather than people who would know if a set is mapped. One thing, again, as a UK person, I find interesting. I don't really see the point, but I understand the American stores usually they have blister packs rather than like a box display for sale.
Only at retail.
So I've seen it like I've seen it like a Walmart and your Targets where you have like blister packs rather than a box on shelves. Why is that?
Theft. It's solely because of theft.
It's harder to put like a whole blister in your pocket than like a pack.
Well, it's easy to steal a blister pack, but the blister pack helps them put a security device in there. I've known people who have built entire empires off of the shoplifting. It's incredibly, like, people think that like stealing is this crazy crime in America. It's not. It's really not. People do it all the time. I don't. Okay, full disclaimer. I don't. I do not. But I do.
We do not advocate for the stealing of Yu-Gi-Oh cards.
Right, because think about it this way. I will tell you. I'll also tell you now from my knowledge of retail. Even if they catch you stealing, most of the time they don't do anything about it because they don't want to. If they do something about it, they risk you suing them, and they would rather let you walk away with your $4 pack of cards than risk a multi-$1,000 lawsuit. Retailers actually, like major retailers, actually have money set aside to cover their losses from shoplifting. They account for it already because they know what's going to happen and they know they can't stop it. Buy starter cards that are cheap, regardless of archetype or meta relevance. Violet, I'm not entirely sure what your goal is with that question. First off, what do you mean by starter cards?
I assume he means cards that are generically good and would be usable in a multiple different decks. So, for example, Lone Fire Blossom. Yeah, the staples. The problem is I see is that if a staple gets a relevance, it often gets reprinted. Normally after it's already had a relevance, but it does normally get reprinted. So if you look at like Snake Rain, for example, everyone has always been hyping up that card. Like as soon as they get a new reptile, we'll get like a new like insane use for Snake Rain, and it's being reprinted as soon as it's gonna become relevant.
That is definitely true. And also for staples, usually the price reflects how popular the card is already. Like you have to remember that in the digital age, the market is able to adjust very quickly. So even for staples, usually the price is the price and it doesn't move very much. Like when was the last time we saw something like Infinite Impermanence or Ash Blossom just randomly spike or crash in price? They just don't do that for a reason. Wait, because what do you mean by Gazelle? Salmon Gazelle? It's bulk. It's a starter. It's a structure deck card. Servant. I mean, I'm gonna guess Violet means Servant of Endymion, but I'm also hoping that she's not talking about. They're not talking about Nadir Servant.
I think that
starters. I think she's like in the game cards that start your combos. Is that what you mean?
So yes, yeah.
Okay, not necessarily. It's really not a good idea to just buy individual cards that are part of an archetype. If you're going to be buying individual cards that are part of a specific strategy or archetype, you may as well buy the whole core and try and flip the whole core complete. People do love buying complete deck cores because it's less work for them. Yeah, I can't really recommend that. If your goal is to make a profit, then just like buying random one-off cards out of a certain archetype, just you're gonna have a bunch of random hodgepodge of cards you can't do anything with.
The only exception I would say to that is if the starter card isn't archetype locked and the rest of the deck is terrible. So, for example, for like a really bad example, you could say, like Ancient Gear Wyvern, like is the only good Ancient Gear card reasonably out of that whole structure deck that could anytime see support. But again, it's archetype locked, so again, not the best example. I really can't think of one, to be honest.
Armageddon Knight, but that's been reprinted in the ground.
Yeah, like Armageddon Knight, Lone Fire Blossom again, but Lone Fire Blossom has been reprinted.
I mean, again, it's like you're just buying. If you're just buying starters, you're really just buying random cards from different archetypes that you have called starters. I mean, like, yeah, sure, in the game they're starters, but like for a lot of times when it comes to you have to detach your player brain from your market brain. Like cards that see no meta play obviously go up in value. Not even talking about vintage. But I mean, yeah, I can't really call that a viable strategy of just buying starter cards. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You may as well just buy the whole strategy. Like I could see you investing in certain whole archetypes, like buying an entire deck core and then holding it, hoping it goes up. That is a definitely very valid proposition. But just buying the starters doesn't really get you anywhere.
Also, as a general rule of thumb, the deck cores only retain their value if they are like either A, high rarity, or B, they are still good.
Yes. Oh, this does bring up another good point. For anyone who said that high rarity is a bad idea, I mean, like I've heard this a lot. That high rarity is a waste of money. You're just wasting money on cards that do the same thing. Not entirely true. High rarity does have a purpose in the game. What?
Go look at like a max rarity spellbook core or max rarity Mermail core.
Exactly, that was exactly what I was about to say. Like high max rarity is how you protect your investment. Like look at how far minimum rarity Mermail or Water or Spellbook has dropped in value compared to the max rarity. Max rarity is actually not necessarily a bad idea if your goal is to protect your investment.
Even like Striker, like the ultis are still retaining value,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the decks like it's like rogue at best.
Right. Exactly. Max rarity is not 100% a bad idea.
I think too, original printing too. Like looking at Pot of Extravagance right now, they're all kind of like $20 to $25, but the original price, or I'm sorry, the original printing for like $2 more, I think would be worth it compared to like the Megatin reprint.
Um, that one is a little bit interesting because some people do call prismatic secret rare quote unquote higher than secret rare. This is where we get to the really subjective part of this. Generally, if you can afford higher rarity, go for it. If not, like just go for the lowest rarity. Yeah, lowest rarity generally holds the least amount of value, but if your goal is just to have a card to play with, just go low. If your goal is just to play with it, you may as well just go low rarity. But I mean, first that original print does have its market, but generally it there's not a whole lot of in between between just highest and lowest rarity. Like looking at extravagance, is undisputably the highest rarity is collector's rare, right? People generally aren't going to differentiate which rarities are higher and lower when you're in the middle. You have your highest, you have your lowest, and then everything else in between is kind of just going to fall on the same. Like, I mean, like, ask me who is differentiating which is better, dual power or dual overload ultra imperm. Like, is anyone actually having that debate? No.
True.
Is there an ulti extra? No. There is no ultimate extra. Maybe an OCG because they get all the nice stuff. Maybe I would have to look that up, but not in TCG. We don't get that stuff. When you buy a meta card for the purposes of playing it, you got the joy of playing that card in a tournament or playing it at locals, playing it at regionals. It was essentially a service that was rendered onto you. So technically, you lost value, but first off, if you can read the market and tell when it's about time for a card to sell a card. That's definitely a valid strategy of just buying and selling cards right before they get reprinted. There are some people that are just that good at guessing.
The other thing is if you buy like a really good meta card like this, like I bought Secret Evenlies and Imperms at full value when they dropped. Like I knew that card was going to get a reprint at some point. I just knew that card was going to lose value at some point, but it needed it to play it, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like buying meta. You can't like buying meta cards at full. It's a car. It really is a car. I mean, like there's a reason why your card drops in value. There's a reason why your meta deck drops in value. It's the same reason.
You could say that with like Droplets, because Droplets has just got announced an ulti reprint. Yes, the ulti is going to be more, but people who bought the Secret still got 2-3 months out of use of them first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you could argue that they didn't get much use of it because of the whole lockdown thing, but that's just a whole other issue in and of itself. It's not really worth covering. But yeah, you're right.
If we're talking in general,
yes, you got enjoyment out of the card. Better to invest in Rogue to save money, buy meta decks, and sell them when reprint season is expected. Rogue, for the most part, starts cheap, stays cheap, never goes up. There are some exceptions to like Burning Abyss or whatever, but for the most part,
Brigade.
Rogue is Rogue for a reason. What?
Tri Brigade was a good example of this.
Yeah.
Of a successful Rogue buyout as such.
But you have to be very big brain to call that. Or you could just do what some people do is like, so I know some people, they just buy every decor and then hope and pray that their wins outweigh their losses. But to answer the question, it really depends on your goals. It really does. Like, do you want to be a successful vendor and at the same time be winning tournaments? I mean, that's really only something you can answer for yourself, Violet. If you want to put your answer in chat, I mean, feel free to do so. It would definitely help us carry your question a little bit further.
Are people aware of like the rules of selling and at YCS if you attend to YCS?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a very good one. Okay. Well, first off, like full disclosure, I'm sure you guys know this because I have the role here. I am a registered Konami judge. Technically, on paper, you are not allowed to buy and sell cards at an event. This rule was created only to make the table vendors happy. I'm just gonna let you know this now. Back when Upper Deck ran the show, and in the very early Konami days, they did crack down on this. But at this point, they don't care. Like I guarantee you that when you're judging an event, even if you're just a basic floor judge, you have about three to four other things you'd rather be doing than breaking up someone's $20 deal. So technically, You shouldn't be buying and selling at events, but as long as you're smart about it, then you should be fine. I've done it all the time, and again, like I said, I'm a registered judge. If someone wants to report me to Konami, go right at they could. I would hope none of you,
Also,
none of you are snitches, but there you go.
in the 1% chance the judge does stop you, you can just walk out of the premises door and continue your trade fully fine.
Exactly. Yeah. Only
So
locals
they're only
care.
saving.
Only locals
they're only
care.
saving
That's what we
themselves.
have under the table. Like you also got to remember that like most the average lifespan of a card shop is about 3 years. Most of them don't last 3, 4, maybe 5 years. Very few make it even to 10. Yeah, really. Why? Your profit margins on a shop are very, very tiny. Again, like remember, you are buying sealed product. Like the vast majority of your revenue comes from sealed product, not singles. You're buying your sealed product at about, let's just say 70% MSRP, and you sell it at 100% MSRP. Technically, that's a 30% profit, but now you have to pay. Let's just first you have to pay employees, and even if you don't have even if you don't have to pay employees, you have to pay rent, you have to pay taxes, you have to pay insurance. All these things are, and you have to pay the utilities, to keep the lights on. All these little things are chipping into your profit margins to the point where sometimes you break even. And eventually, if all you're doing is breaking even, then you just close. Because what's the point? Not beneficial to have a card shop. I'm not gonna lie, I did once have a goal of owning a card shop. Nowadays, no, especially not in this market. Realistically, yeah, owning a card shop is something you do because you really love the game, love gaming, and you want to have a community for it, and you really want to be there for the people that support your game, which are all very emotional and not very logical reasons. Owning a card shop is honestly not a very profitable venture. It really isn't. Especially
the only real benefit for a card shop is the ability to host a locals.
Yeah.
And get a returning player base.
Yeah.
Because really you're holding them hostage at that point. Because where else are you going to go? I'm the locals around here.
Right. That really is it. And, you really do have to, if you have a good locals, support them as best you can. There's a reason why people say support local businesses, support your local card shop, because are you gonna play at Walmart? Are you gonna play at Tesco? No. So owning a card shop is not a very profitable venture. It really isn't. It can be if you're really good at it. Obviously, in any given market space, a few very, very smart, very lucky players will make it to the top, and they'll make a lot of money. It is definitely possible, but the vast majority will not. So hopefully, not necessarily true. You do not have to have competitive players to have a thriving shop. You just need to have customers. If all of your customers are crappy, casual, scrub, dark magician, blue eye players, what do you care? They're buying cards. You just have to have a good clientele, regardless of whether or not they're competitive or not.
The good analogy for this is Friday Night Magic. That I don't know what they're called for OTS stores for Magic, but that's a very casual based locals idea as such for Magic, and yet it still sees massive success.
Yeah, that is definitely true. But you guys have to remember that this is more looking at the card game more than the card shops. But you also got to remember that the vast majority of a card game's profits come from its casual tabletop players. Like if you look at Yu-Gi-Oh, I guarantee you about at least half, if not more, probably closer to 2/3 of all Yu-Gi-Oh players have never set foot in a card shop, much less even gone to a big tournament. Buying shipping twice, so I buy in bulk. Technically yes, because you want to buy it on Amazon. I could throw up some Amazon links. I don't know if they still work or not, but you could. The question is what kind of volume do you expect? How much sales Junk? How much sales volume do you expect? How many deals in a month do you expect to do? Me personally, I do quite a large volume, so I buy 50 bubble mailers at a time, and I pay $8 US for 50 bubble mailers. Let's see, not a ton. Then honestly, it's buy what you need. You could just, or the other way to go about it is you just buy once and you basically almost never have to buy shipping supplies again. Entirely plausible, but if you're not planning on doing a whole lot of volume, then there's not a whole lot of point in just having a whole bunch of shipping materials just laying around doing nothing.
The only exception I could see to this is something in the UK recently we had where our stamps basically doubled in price. And so before the double in price time, one of my local vendors just like bulk bought as many stamps as he could because he's basically getting them for 50% off from that point forward.
Yeah, that's definitely one way to look at it. Postage prices are definitely annoying. I mean, even in America, it used to be a flat $4 for me to ship to ship with tracking. Now it's $4.20. And if you're going even, and depending on where you're shipping to, it could be $4 as high as $4.40.